Go. Hi, happy Wednesday. This is Doug and Cindy today. We got a special guest with us today, Phil Smith. So, Phil, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for asking.
You look familiar. I mean, you've been here before, right?
Yes, I have.
It's
Yes,
been a
I most true.
For those of you loyal listeners and watchers, you may remember a video we did. How long ago has it been?
While.
A while.
A while back,
Several
yeah.
years
Yeah,
ago.
it's a year or two ago.
That Cindy did with Phil, and so at the time you had been a caregiver for your wife for several years. Your wife, who had Alzheimer's, at home, and then she finally transitioned to a facility, and then you was an advocate for her during that period of time, right?
Absolutely. She actually started out in a assisted living facility with a dementia unit, which the level of care is one thing. And after about a year or so in there, she had to move to another facility, which she got uh, higher nursing care or intensive care for her in a nursing home with a dementia facility.
Now, we've probably asked you this before, but from the time you first noticed that your wife had symptoms, I mean, reflecting back on it, and you may not have registered at the time, but the time you first noticed it she went until her death, how long was that period?
Wow. From the time I first noticed it, and this is approximate, it was 2010-11 time frame, and it was just mild hints at it, and it was then of course her death was March of 2021, 2021.
So 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah. But the first hints of it were it wasn't Alzheimer's in my mind. It was those symptoms are very similar to some I've seen before my mother who had Alzheimer's. So was it just a blurb? Was she under stress or something? And from that point, we had.
So at the
So what we call that is denial.
Yes, yes, you do not want to say this.
no,
No, it's. I'm denying that. I'm hoping it's something else that's curable and
but in the very early days, what was it? She just maybe forgot something, or
the most distinctive thing I remember, and I don't, was she would repeat some questions, and going, why is she doing it? Because she had a sharp mind. She had a master's degree, and she was in finance, and she was a very sharp person. And I'll never forget, we would have the kids over for Sunday, and we had my son and daughter over, and their families, and both of them that Sunday she was fixing something in the kitchen, and I was helping. A little later that day, says, "What's wrong with Mom? She doesn't seem to be remember what she's doing. Have you noticed that, Dad?" And I went, "Yeah, I have." That was my tip off that if somebody else had seen it,
wasn't just your imagination?
yes. I mean, you got to give somebody leeway when what did I do with my keys? Well, that happens to everybody.
It is.
But it goes further. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that's interesting. My brother's wife died with Lewy body, and I asked him that question one time. You know, thinking back on it,
Mm-hmm.
how long had it been, and he came up with the same 10-year period. You know, and this is in retrospect. At the beginning, he just wasn't obvious, and then in denial.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah.
But it was thinking back on it, like, well, when was it really? About 10 years.
Well, yeah, and that's interesting because, as I said, my mother passed from Alzheimer's. But when she got, my brother is a physician assistant type, so he He's in the medical field. And when Mom had it, he told me, I was talking to him about it. He says, well, usually from diagnosis to being terminal, is anywhere from 8 to 10 years on average. And add the numbers on what, but that's usually from diagnosis to then. So, yeah.
You and Vicky were married 55 years and 4 days.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, our anniversary was on March 19th, and she passed away on March 23rd, and that was of this year, 2021, and we were married in 66.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll do the math. It's a long time. We married when we were about 8 years old.
8 years old.
Yeah.
Well, in Arkansas, that's
No,
okay,
no. No, we were married in school. We were there.
So it's like there were 2 of you, but you became one.
Absolutely.
And as Vicky went through this Alzheimer's and declined, you did too. And you grieved.
Yes, you do. There's certain points that stick out to you plainly. I'll never forget when I first, after that, I told you about the kids and stuff, saying something to me. I made an appointment and we went to see our physician, and he saw her and asked a few questions and says, hey, let me set you up with somebody. And we went over, and what? Denial. I was hoping they'd find something structurally wrong, what small tumor they could fix, an aneurysm, a small stroke, something like that. And and we saw them, and they said, you might want to go to UAMS and see the people there. And that's where they started doing the detailed looks at her that came back with the diagnosis in May of 13.
Okay. You were a caregiver at home.
Yes.
From 2013 to 2017.
Yes.
4 years. That's a long time.
Yeah, other people have done longer, so my goodness, I mean that. But what it really started a year or two before that diagnosis. You just had your eye on her because they were taking it took them about 9 months to a year to finally they feel comfortable in giving that diagnosis. So I remember so well. She went out one day to take one of our vehicles down to be serviced, and she had been gone a while, and I'd been working around the house, and I got a call from her, and she says, I don't know where I'm at. What? I don't know where. I said, well, describe some stuff around. She did. She wound up way over on the other side of town. Not this town, but another town. I said, oh my goodness, you stay right there, park it. I will be there to get you. And that was when it hit home. First big hit home. And of course the keys came out of her hands immediately and never went back at that. She just couldn't,
No.
Yeah. Those are little minor steps, you see. That's one. That's a big one, but it's still then there's other steps where she couldn't go in and fix her own food in the kitchen because she'd forget she had salted something or she had done this, and so you'd have to take care of that. And it's just little small steps along the way there.
Did she give you any pushback, like on taking the keys away?
She didn't on that. I really said, you don't have to work now, so hey, I'll drive us all the time. You don't have to drive anymore.
Okay.
My job. Let me do my job, please. And she was very easy to get along with things. So she didn't fight that. She didn't mind riding. So
Yeah.
I want to talk about anticipatory grief because a lot of people don't understand what that is. Even if they read the definition of it, they don't recognize how it impacts their life. You experienced this, didn't you?
yes, now I'll give you what I saw, what I in that. Somebody give it a name. I didn't know it at the time, but in this journey with our lives, you see the mind of, in my case, my wife, your spouse, deteriorating along the way. And after the diagnosis, you know where that leads to. And you see these little steps along the way, and you start that's like little small deaths along the way, and you grieve when you see she can't do this, or she wanders and you can't take her to the store anymore because she wanders off, and you have to you can't do what you need to do. You going like, and when they get up and you have to help them get undressed and in the shower and cleaned up, and each one of those little steps amounts, and you start grieving. And then the important one is when that mind terminates. I call it terminates. They might talk gibberish or whatever, but you're not known to them.
That's the hardest part.
Yep. And you go through the grief of not being known. So their body's alive. It's that much time that you watch that mind loss, and then that body's still alive. So you anticipate that you know where it's leading.
Mm.
That
Wow.
has to be painful.
You know, we had a client just a few years ago. I remember what you just said. His wife declined to the point where she eventually had to go to a long-term care facility. And the very first day there, he hurried home, got some stuff, and came back. And she was sitting there, and he walked right by her, and like nothing.
Yep.
And
She didn't recognize it.
that just hit him like he hit him in the head with a hammer. I mean, it's just like, whoa.
My first one on that was when I still had her at home, and I got her up one morning, and I says, let's get you out of your PJs and get you in some clothes, and we'll have our breakfast. And I got, who are you? What are you doing? You can't do this to me. I says, honey, I'm just helping you. Well, I don't know who you are. Why are you doing this to me? And that's the first time other than that, she used to know me. And then after that, she would know me sometimes, but the frequency of her not knowing me became more. And that's the anticipatory grieving part that you see. And you have to, you say, it's not their fault. They didn't do it. You gotta look at it from that point.
Yeah, that's. Let me ask you on the front end, and was there a point in time when she was at herself enough that she knew she was developing Alzheimer's, and y'all may have talked about that or something?
No, she did not. Yes, to answer your question, yes, there was a time. It was before she went into the one facility. We would be eating and talking about something, maybe something down the road in a month or so, and she'd get up and run to the bathroom and cry, and I knew what it was, and I'd say, hey, let me come in, let's talk. No, she didn't want me to see her. She didn't want to, but I knew what it was. She was grieving.
Yeah.
She was grieving.
Yeah.
The loss of her ability.
Oh yeah, sure.
You know, we never talked about that anticipatory grief of the person would also.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I wondered about that. I think maybe there's a short period of time for most people that they realize, or
I
maybe
think it was
sometimes they realize, sometimes they don't, that, hey,
I asked several of the experts, doctors, and different ones when she got to that point that didn't recognize or anything else. And I said, is she trapped in her mind knowing what all's going around? And they said, no, everything we see, that they don't have an awareness of self at that point. Meaning they know what they are, what they're doing, who they're missing. They don't realize. And my opinion, I hope that was the case. I'd hate to see the suffering for that length of time. And that's
and Matt just gave us a signal we're going to have to speak up a little bit,
You want to pull
especially
that
Sure.
mic?
Well, no,
when those big trucks
I'm not
come.
projecting to it.
he did a good job of this time.
Tail off. Yeah, well, that's to keep my sense of
Yeah.
being here.
All right.
Okay, there's several things that we talked about earlier that I wanted to mention.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about heartbreak on a daily basis.
Yes, of course. When you see your wife of that many years, heartbreak or grief, which one is it?
Heartbreak, I don't really know how to deal with. Grief, there are people that have written books on it, that have studied it, that have advanced degrees, and can walk you through this process.
I wasn't smart enough to read those books at the time. I really wasn't. It was just, it was easier to feel sorry for yourself and wonder when all of this would get better. Would it get? And it wouldn't get better.
You know it's not going to get
You
better.
know it. You know it without a doubt.
Did you accept that?
Yeah. And I think the exception of it is when I got depressed and I realized it.
And you got help? Who'd you reach out to?
I tried reaching out to family, close friends, and they had empathy,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't go through it.
No.
And I heard so many times, yeah, my mother or my father went through it, and I appreciate that, but
Not the same.
oh no, it's not the same. My mother passed, and yes, it was sad and stuff, but that was in the plan of life. My wife wasn't supposed to.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you notice some of your friends you said
Mm-hmm.
you talked to about it?
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice that some of your friends kind of faded away during this process?
Yeah, but it was not because of. It was because I was not available. I could not, and she would. The last thing I can remember was our 50th anniversary. We had it all together, and friends and family gathered, and it was obvious to them, and they knew that she had been diagnosed. You could tell, and she didn't recognize any of them. Who's that? Who's that? That's your cousin. That's your aunt. Yeah. It was one of those steps, you can't, as a couple, go out anymore. You can't do the things that you would want to do. We did as long as I could, but there's a limit to it too. So friends being natural, they have to keep on living, so they still do their things and stuff, and you sort of get what I considered a little isolated.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter stepped up real strong and helped, but she had a family too, and
Right.
we're at the age she had to take care of her 3 kids and her husband.
Sure.
I feel you have to respect that and
Mhm.
give them the chance to live their life too.
Right.
So,
But that makes them feel guilty.
uh, I'm sure it makes them feel guilty and sad to lose their parent or whatever, but she was very helpful. I know the first time I took my wife to a facility, she would not leave there until she was sure her mom had gone to sleep. It was okay, then she could go. That was the first night. So she was a big help.
I want to talk about this because it's had a big impact on a lot of people. Vicky was in she was in a memory unit of a nursing home when COVID hit.
Yes.
Tell me what that did. I mean, she was already taken away from you.
Yes, she had lost me, I'd lost her. She did not know who I was, and her communication was not that good when she went into that long term. She could communicate some, but when COVID came along and said we have to isolate these people from any outside visitors, that meant that I couldn't go in and see her and see that there's something about knowing that physically they're okay and things are okay. And that went on for what, a year or more.
Mm-hmm.
And it was during that period of time that I realized that's what my life was going to be. Her body and she was there. I knew and could see through a window
Yeah.
that she was there, but my everyday life was no longer there. I couldn't even go visit her on. So
Yeah.
that's when the grieving, the repair, the realizations came along to me that she, if she was alive, she would have wanted me to go ahead and continue on with the things I was doing and my interaction with people. There was no doubt in my mind to that.
You know, and that we've been told with so many people that just had to make it 10 times tougher. That bad enough anyway, but to know closest you can get standing out there, you know, outside the window, peering in at your wife, and you can't even be there to touch her, or comfort her, or speak to her, or that. I mean,
Yeah, well,
that just had to multiply it like times 10. You
it
know.
was at that point in time. She had reached a point where, when I did, and she was in that, and it was there, I could go in and I could hold her hand and talk to her, and she wouldn't know me, and she
Yeah.
didn't know me, and it wouldn't. Even my voice or touch didn't get through to her. So, but it comforted me.
That's
to
what
know-
says important to you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, that started a phase for me of realizing that I had to start rebuilding a new life. So that meant nobody wants to be around somebody that's constantly talking about the things that are not really pleasant. They don't. So if you want to be around somebody and you want to see them, you're going to have to be somebody that is not constantly absorbed in your problems and your
Right.
of the world.
So let's talk about the new life part just a minute. Uh this
What
was
was
a
it?
long road, but what have you done since
Okay.
your wife's passing to help you to be able to move on just a little
My
bit?
daughter had a lot of friends. They used to go out to the movies, and that, of course, that was shut down with COVID too.
Yeah.
And they would get together, and they would have at one of them's house or something, and they would invite what I call myself the fifth wheel. But they were trying to surround me with friends and things like that. And it was the activity that I said I want to become involved in different activities. I took up of course I played golf, and I took up pickleball, and it was different things that you could do at that point in time. Those are outside activities that you can do, and your close friends that you see, and it was I guess just it hit me that what I was telling you earlier, that I had to be a person that didn't walk around with the reminding them of the frailty of their lives is just as frail as what they be reminded of from me all the time. So you have to be somewhat
That's not
doing
fair. That's not fair. I mean, you're going through a lot emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
and you're around them. They should. I'm sorry. I think they should make the effort to be more understanding, because nobody gets out of this life alive. Those
It's true.
people, those people are going to have
Yep.
other members of their family that if they don't experience Alzheimer's, it's going to be something, cancer.
Yep.
It's maybe some other lifelong struggle.
That's exactly correct. But it, by the same token, I felt it was, if I wanted to be around them, and I wanted to be welcomed to be around them, to be asked out to dinner, to go do something, that I had to be the person that was uh, that they felt comfortable interacting to.
Right.
That's the words I was looking for.
Yeah, I see
And
that.
and
So you did that for them.
well, no, for me. So I would have people I could be interactive for. I did it. It was selfish. It was very selfish that I did that.
Right.
But it allowed me then to be around folks that helped me by interacting and talking about some other subject than that one subject that was so heavy. all
Yeah.
the time. I know that sounds silly, but it helped me.
Okay. So you read a book about grief and
Mhm.
grieving.
Mm-hmm.
Should should they add a chapter in there about if you're going to visit with your friends, hand your friends this chapter? Like, this is how you can help me. You don't have to be there to support me 100%, 24 hours a day, but just listen.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, just listen, and I think we each have an obligation to. I didn't have to tell them repeatedly that I'd lost, and I've lost losing something, and losing someone, and losing my wife. They know it,
Yeah.
and so it was, to me, comforting that they would want to interact and tell the joke and be something other than long faced around me, which many people thought that it was nothing but, you don't want to see anything sadness. I wanted a break from that sadness. I
Yeah.
carried enough. I didn't need them to be that way too. So that was me. And to answer your question, I don't know if they need to. That, I think each person has to find their way. I know this about the book. It tells you you have to face the fact that it is a new life for you. Once you lose a close one, such as your spouse, your life has changed. It is not going to be different. I mean, it is going to be different. It's not going to be the same. And so therefore you have to be a little proactive to start rebuilding that.
And I haven't been through it, and I hope I never am, but from the outside looking in, my observation is you're 100% spot on. I mean, you've got to, at some point, just think, hey, what can I do? I love my wife. We had 55 years together, and if she could beam in for 5 minutes, she'd say, Phil, move on.
It's funny you say that. It's one of the things that occurred in my life. Gosh, I'm trying to think back when it was. It was before all the Alzheimer's stuff came along. But we at the dinner table was talking about the philosophy of life and things, and you know how you're married, you know what I'm talking about. You get into those discussions. But she looked at me with dead serious, and she says to me, honey, if anything ever happens to me, I want you to remarry. I says, what are you doing? Telling me why? She says, I know you well enough. You need somebody else. And I'm going, what is she saying? But she might have known me well enough.
You think she probably did.
Yeah. But I'll never forget that. And so that's true love.
Yeah. So that's a clue. License to go on. So, and it appears you're doing a great job of it. So, other than pickleball and, what else are you doing with to move forward?
Well, not much because of COVID. I mean, I one of the things that I had considered, do I want to sell the house that we had built and move out? No.
Another big decision.
Yeah, I'm happy in it. The keeping up that place, that's my happy point. I like mowing. I like planting stuff. I like creating the garden. That's fun for me.
Yeah.
Now, what has happened is my grandson has got up and out of school, and he's working here in Little Rock. I don't know if it's his mother told him to it, or if he really enjoyed it. But for the past couple of years now, he'll call me up. Hey, Papa, what are you doing? I want to come over. Let's work in the shop. He wants to come over and work in my wood
Well, that's
shop.
cool.
Yeah, and we've built several things. And he's got them now for his new house that he and his fiance bought.
How old is he?
He's 26.
Well, I would imagine he would enjoy that.
He does. Yeah, he
Yeah.
comes over. And of course, he knows he'll get a good meal when he does. But it warms my heart. I mean, that kind of activity. So I made a decision. I didn't want to sell. I realized that I have the freedom to travel a little bit. That was shut down immediately with her, and it'd been a good 10 years before I took a trip longer than not even 24 hours because I want to be here. But I've done some things. I went out to see my sister in San Diego. I went to Hilton Head, South Carolina. I've done that this year since she passed, and it got me away from my mind into something different that wasn't the same thing. So you asked me, that's what am I doing? That kind of stuff.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Well, we've already run over, but Phil, thank you for coming today. Thank you for this closure video. And I know this will help a lot of people because a lot of people watching this have been through similar journeys. And a lot of people struggle with this, some more than others, but it's good to hear, like we were talking earlier, you see the commercials, these are not actors, or real people. This is a real person, and that's really walked the walk. So I thank you for your time. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. And believe it or not, it's good closure for me to
Yeah.
be able to talk.
Yeah.
It helps. It's good therapy. So you guys help me too.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for watching today. Please share this with another family caregiver that may have recently lost a loved one, because it is a tough time, and to hear the story of a real family caregiver that's gone through it all, this may help them a little bit. I certainly hope so. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
And thank you for being a caregiver for your loved one. You're making a huge difference in their life.